I think this is a mandatory POI. So yeah, you should receive and offer POI, and that is highly encouraged. And I'm gonna intervene in the instances where the POI is kind of many raised more than one times at the point of six. But second, you may specify your gender pronoun or preferred way of POI before starting the speech. Okay, if there's no relevant question, the motion for this House reads, this House believes that the habit of feminism has more harm than good. I'd like to invite the Prime Minister to start off this debate.
あ、聞こえますか？
もう少し声を大きくしたりすることって可能でしょうか？
聞いてないかな？
このマイクですか今聞こえてるのって。
大丈夫ですか？めっちゃクリアです。
本当？じゃあ僕のマイク利用力が低かった。じゃあ聞こえますかね？
はい。
ありがとうございます。じゃあ始めます。Thank you, Chair. For years and years, the feminist movement who has advocated for a desirable form of women's life has harmed women as a whole, and that is what we are going to argue today. So what we are going to argue today is that this habit or kind of feminism has caused harms to women, and harms to women is the most important things that we need to talk about in this debate, because we think that women in general, we think it comprises basically half of the population, which is pretty large, and women's protection and women's promotion in society in all kinds of aspects is what feminism is all about. So I think the primary concern in this debate is about what happened to women so far. I think this debate is more about the retrospective rather than that's going to happen in the future, because we think this motion is all about having a narrative that has caused more harm than good in the past. And that is what we're going to argue today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about three things. Firstly, I'm going to tell you what this habit of feminism is all about and what kind of harm it has caused on women. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how this narrative has specifically fragmented feminism and weakened feminism as a whole, leading to less legislative changes and a political bargaining power for the feminism itself. And lastly, I'm going to tell you about why we think that the good they have caused is not necessarily that large and the harm is much larger. First of all, let's look at what this habit all kind of feminism is all about. If you look at the info slides, what the info slides suggest is that it is a narrative that says specifically that it is desirable to have a career and at the same time be a good mother at home. We think this is very different from other kind of feminism that has risen in the past decade or a couple of decades so far. For example, the traditionally strong kind of feminism, it says that men and women should be equal. We should remove the glass ceiling because it removes the choice from the women of pursuing a career when that woman wanted to do so. So the notion here is that you are promoting a choice for women and not necessarily promoting a value or a desirable form of life upon women at all. We think that there are also other things like be who you are kind of feminism, saying that if you actually wanted to become a person who always stays at home, or people who want to care about the children, to care about the family, the parents and children, more than anything else, that is another form of feminism of women's empowerment that you can choose. It is a valid lifestyle. We think what this motion specifically suggests is that there has been a rise of feminism that specifically advocates for a desirable form of women, which is to pursue career and family work at the same time. And this is a harm. First of all, we think that this is a very tough job to take on. We think you have to take a career. You have to spend hours and hours working hard. You have to compete with other men who don't necessarily take care of the family as much as women do in general. We think that taking care of children, where traditionally men has not necessarily been that cooperative in housework, is also a laborious job. We think it is very laborious and hard for women to take on this desirable form of life, and that is a harm on women. often it doesn't necessarily work out very well. It doesn't work like what you see on SNSs, where influencers advocate that they are taking a good career at the same time they are loving the children. These kind of virtual realities that you see on the internet is not necessarily that real or common. You feel like you have been failing. You feel like you feel like you're not necessarily a good person anymore because you're not fulfilling the desirable life anymore, and you start to demonize yourself for being a failure, and that is a harm that you are actually taking on. If we think that there are also women who purely wanted to take on a career kind of life, or purely want to take on a family kind of life, these people are being forced to believe that this is not desirable. You are only being a partly desirable. You are only being selfish. You're being an enemy of women because you become a role model that only supports one end. We think that these kind of things comes up to you every day. You internalize it and start to hate yourself, and that is a harm on women. We think on our side of the house, we think if this didn't happen, we think that the narratives would be things to promote choices. You can be who you are. If you wanted to take on career, we are here to legislate, to promote a policy that removes glass ceilings, promotes higher payments, and you now can take on the choice only if you wanted to. And that is, we think, the comparative on our side of the house. Second thing, fragmentation of feminism. We think that traditionally, feminism has been strong, and feminism has actually accumulated manpower and financial power, but they have traditionally, because they have been promoting equality and choice kind of feminism, we think that this group of feminism is much stronger. Now, what this has this done? We think that having it all kind of feminism, first of all, has fragmented this kind of feminism by saying that that kind of thought is not desirable, meaning that a strong older group of feminism is no longer there to help this fund this feminism anymore. They can't necessarily promote themselves. They can't necessarily have legislative changes. They can't necessarily have feminism working together to promote for legislative changes and these kind of things. It also complicates the average man's understanding, because men has been traditionally been told you for years that women need to have a choice, but then you suddenly think here that women have a desirable kind of choice, and it complicates men's feeling. We think this actually fragments the support for women in all ways, and that actually harms for the political changes that we should have into the future. So we think that this is very important, because feminism has a lot of things to be done, especially in terms of politics. There are more legislation to be taken, and once you believe, you acknowledge that women only comprises 50% of the population, you need the support of most of women, and at the same time a bit of men, and these kind of support would go down and actually harms the legislative political power of feminism as a whole. Lastly, about the harm, we think that a lot of women, first of all, opt into this narrative because they have been told about how both ends are very great, and you, from a reasonable point of view, you do believe that having a family is great, having a career is also great, and then you are easily tricked into believing that this is having both is the most desirable way of thinking it. We think it is a strong words to use, the word desirable, to the average weak woman who has been exposed to multiple views. You want to have a stronger view, and you jump onto this desirable kind of views. We think the good is not necessarily that large, because even if you take on a pure career job out of necessity or out of interest, or we think that people do actually have a family in most cases. We think that even on our side of the house, we think that people would pursue career and family at the right balance that they choose. What this narrative does is that it imposes one kind of strong desirableness onto these individuals to have it all, and we think that is a harm. Thank you very much.
Thank the speaker for the speech. I will now invite the leader of opposition.
Hey, am I audible?
Yes, unclearly.
はい、おっさんがあれしてるからビデオつけちゃう。ちょっと待ってください。あ、カメラオンにできないので、はい。始めます。Hey. Starting with 3, 2, 1, go. So opening government talking about the idea of how the idea of like a habit of feminism has bad, but we talking about how the practices of the habit of feminism actually empowers women to advocating for equal rights as men and unionize the feminist movement membership. That is good. We say we oppose this motion. Today I have three things to say. Firstly, so how briefly set up how the habit for all feminism looks like. Since the opening government clearly lack the practices of the habit of feminism and how to advocate for internally and externally. So that is I clearly present you the brief introduction of the entire looks of this feminism, and secondly, explain how the empowers female mindset as equal as man is important to for the individual woman to insist same rights inside of a corporation and society, and lastly about how this narrative actually not unionized tied up with so female body. Okay, firstly about setup. Two things. Firstly, we clearly agreed upon the government definition that have done more harm than good means we have to see the state of affair historically and retrospectively. So we have to focus on the past incident in the past rather than the future. And secondly, that habit of feminism on the principle that is focused on the working. So female can take both working environment or so career and also the like having a happy family. But in the practices level, we have two things of setup. Firstly, what we matter today is how to advocating for the like feminism, how to advocate strategy of the feminism, because the team government have to defend the different strategy that is conducted by the feminism, right? So that is why we have to focus on the unique features of the habit of feminism. Firstly, internally, they empowers the like movement members. So since the habit of feminism, so clearly state women should take both that so internally that no feminist movement have to like advocating the so empowers internal members of the feminist movement to say that yes both so like providing the clear like career paths and family happinesses and role models and like and clear languages that women can insist inside of the corporations and both corporations and families. And secondly, the external advocacy also conducted by this under this narrative by three ways. Firstly, these feminist movement uniquely advocating for the system of corporate structure or benefit to say that so these corporation or corporate benefit have to care about the family issues or so on. Since this is so important because in their cyber house, these corporate benefit or corporate structure is exclusive because that is regarded as a public spheres, right? So that is why the feminist movement can uniquely introduce a private spheres, so cares to the private sphere for corporations. And secondly, the advocating for the government. So since the government had the massive power to regulate these corporations or families, that is why these government feminist movement has advocating for the government to equip these legal structures. And thirdly, these feminist movement advocating for the social norm. Since most of the problem coming from the like dichotomy between household and corporation is caused by the mindset of the toxic masculinity or so. That is why the feminist movement gradually changed that kind of like social norm to say that so men have to care about the families or so. So we say that that is important, so uniquely conducted upon our side because so on their side of the house that there's a narrative so dichotomized narrative between the household and corporations, and male only cares about the corporation and do not care about the house. So yes, for CG.
There's a missing link in your argument. Why are like conservative companies likely to accept such have it all feminism narrative in the first place?
Okay, so that is explained in my so DIPT speech. Okay, so why the empowerment itself is principally important. So three things. The problem here is that a female face on government side of the house, female forced to choose the binary choices. So a female neither the no female have to choose the family or the company, and that choices are completely incompatible. But on the other hand, male enjoy both because male working at the company, and also the male can like so see the happy like spend happy life because of the women working as the housewives or so on. So that is clearly firstly that so since this narrative so aware so empowers women to say or equip the mindset for the woman to say that so it is we can have the desire to pursue the both. That is why the women have the clear languages to insist that we can advocating for the male or so on. So that kind of mindset is extremely important in terms of equality. And secondly, binary choices are dangerous in two ways. Firstly, for the individual, so it's time. Okay. Yeah,
I thank the speaker for the speech, and now I will welcome the Deputy Prime Minister.
Ah, 聞こえますか？
聞こえます。
これでよかった。We'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. What must be presented to you as the false dichotomy of the government paradigm? The reality of the government paradigm is rather that women can choose from the spectrum of the choosing the family and seeking the career. The women are more likely to, there is various women who want to seek the career or who want to seek the family status, and they also the women who want to choose the both balance. We think that this kind of spectrum should be respected as a feminist movement, and we think rather that focusing on the balance is particularly dangerous. This is a clear stance coming from our side of the house. That's why the point out of the dichotomy is just false, and rather the spectrum is more preferred way, and the spectrum is more realistic context of government paradigm. So let's talk about two things in my speech. Firstly, the why for the women who want to seek the career or the seeking the family and choosing by their own will, choosing the lifestyle from the spectrum is damaging. And secondly, I'm going to talk about why the women who want to balance the career and family is also respected in our paradigm. So let's start from the harm to the women in the spectrum. Firstly, we already mentioned that there is a pressure to balance out, to balance both career and women. Prime Minister already mentioned a lot of analysis how the women are more likely to seek by using these kind of rhetoric by the feminist movement or the feminist argumentations. So in the level of the economy or the corporations or the influencer, more likely to utilize this kind of argument or of the have it all feminism, because this kind of the kira career and kira motherhood is often respected from the SNS level. Like for example, posting the babies photos at the same time posting this kind of the business trip, this kind of the more the fantastic the career women and who also take the career very good motherhood is more likely to respect it and influenced by the corporation and influencer by the profit-seeking model. That's why this kind of have it all feminism is justified from the feminist movement. In this particular occasion, they are likely to more emphasized by these kind of profit-seeking motivations. In this particular occasion, the more women are more likely to be influenced by these kind of corporate image or the influencers campaigning. We think this kind of situation is particularly harmful for the women who want to choose their own will by their own will to choose from this kind of spectrum. Like for example, women who want to seek the career, they stigmatized by the not having the family, because the career women can seek the both career and motherhood, but they cannot do she cannot do so. This kind of stigma is often happening if they do not choose so, and they unwillingly maybe choosing the family in order to follow, in order to be not stigmatized by this situation. This is also problematic, because even though they 100% focusing on their career, in this occasion they can success in their career foot, and they can emphasize the more existence and atmosphere of women's empowerment, but as a result of this kind of the seeking both, because due to their capacity or due to their characteristic, they may fail because they are stressed of the having the family, stress of the raising the children is often happening for the women who want to seek the 100% career. In this occasion, this is highly likely to harming to the people. And more than that, having the family has lots of spectrum in lots of steps in terms of the for the women who want to seek the career. Like for example, whether or not they marry or not, whether or not having the children or not, whether on the way of the raising the children, like for example, the frequency of utilizing the housekeepers or so and so on and so forth. We think this kind of pressure to good mother, like for example, they do not use, they maximally commit that their children's raising, at the same time they seek the career. We think this kind of pressure is so huge for women who do not have the motivation to do so, but they are coercively do so. We think this is not the way the feminist movement should seek so. That's why we think this is particularly problematic in the first places. So let's talk about, so that's why in the pragmatic level, we think this is damaging to the women who want to seek the spectrum. So let's talk about the people who want to seek the career. We think this is not so significant issues in the first places. Firstly, we think that in our paradigm, we don't deny the balance itself. If the women want to seek the both career and motherhood or having the family, we think we respect that, but we think that this is not desirable. This is just one choice of the women in the first places. We think that's why the denial is not happening even in a paradigm in the first places. And more than that, we think that this is natural discourse exists in terms of the role model women who have the capable in terms of they are seeking the career and having the families. We think like for example the SNS influencer. That's why without arguing the have it all feminism, we think that this kind of natural influence exists. That's why we say rather the feminist movement should counter that there is a various spectrum rather than one choice of the both having the career and balancing out the seeking the family. We think that counter in terms of spectrum is available. Just seeking the career is available. Just seeking the family is available. Every spectrum is available. Is the most respected way for the feminist movement. That's why we say even without the balance, we think the women who want to seek the both balance is available even in a paradigm. And more than that, we say rather without the pressure of this kind of have it all feminism, we think that more the balance is available, because we think that firstly, like for example, if they decrease the pressure of the have it all feminism, we think the women may take the longer maternity leave, because we think that seeking the career itself is not so pressured by the this kind of narrative. That's why they can they can take the more time with the families, their children. We think this is available in a paradigm. And also, if you want to seek the career in this occasion, like for example, frequently use the housekeeper, or they use the Uber Eats, or rely on the grandmother for the raising the children. We think these kind of other options because of the decreasing the pressure, because in their paradigm there is a pressure that having a good mother is one of the desirable things for the women. We think this is particularly significant situation, and relaxing and decrease the pressure is one of the important things for seek the both things. That's why we say in our paradigm exclusively for the people who want to seek the balance of the career and having children is available. We think that's why the exclusivity is clear. That's why also win this debate. Thank you.
Thank the speaker for the speech, and now welcome the deputy leader of our opposition.
Hey. So, 3, 2, 1, 4. DPM assert that yes, women can choose the best choices on the spectrum, but we say that is completely false because of two reasons. Firstly, because even when the CV is empty, no company employs you. So that if the women are focusing on houseworks, want to working in some moment at their life, they cannot. It is difficult for them to re-employ for the companies. And secondly, that flexible working program or these companies' benefit is only exclusive on our side of the house. That since the company do not care the family inside of their side of the house. CZ closing government say that so conservative company don't care. So yes, that is true. The conservative company don't care in both sides of the house, but at least that liberal companies or professional companies at least cares about the flexible working program or so on. And because the most of the consulting companies equip the flexible working program or short working program based on the performance, evaluating this individual based on the performance or so on. So that is why we say that at least in our side of the house, the female advocation inside of a company successfully penetrate the corporate culture and change the corporate liberal corporation. That is so clear margin inside of our side of the house. That is we clearly win in the in that dichotomy or spectrum debate. Oh, okay. Two things. Firstly, why the habit of feminism is change the so individual women as more efficient and happy. And secondly, why these so this narrative uniquely unionize feminist movement. Firstly, the efficiency. These individual, feminist habit of feminism provides lots of role model and information. That is based on since the time is limited, and these women have to done the houseworks more efficiently and company works more efficiently. That's why, based on that assumption, this habit of feminism uniquely provides you how to cook easily, or how to cook more shorter, or how to survive cooperation more efficiently, or so on. That is why currently inside of the Ryori cluster, the Doriyoshiharu or Ichiju Issai, or very easy cook is very famous, or there's many fans of the female working at the companies or so on. So that is why that we say that these kind of narrative uniquely provide the information of more efficient lives for women. That is clearly benefit not only the supporters of the habit of feminism, but also entire female. We say that is completely beneficial for the entire women. And why that is exclusive on our side of the house? So on their side of the house, that since the corporate women do not join the houseworks, and housewives only provided the information about more warm or house traditional ways of cook, right? That is why these so on their side of the house, that so family cook may like cooking 24 hours to make fond de bowl or so on. So that is clearly inefficient and clearly burden for also housewives, right? So that is why we say that more efficient, providing the more efficient way of the lifestyle and work style is exclusively available on our side of the house and contribute to the entire happiness for the women, because that clearly decrease the burden of the women. We clearly so habit of feminism clearly contributed to the women's happinesses. Okay, Oji.
Efficient cooking can and has been promoted to support women who choose to stay at home. Menstrual leaves and paternity leaves and all kind of corporate policies to support women to work also has been taken historically to support women who choose to come out of households and work. Why do we need to say that both is desirable?
Relevant on our side of house, because on their side of house, if the supply of the efficient way of cook is like to some extent exists, that demand is too small. So that is why we say that more supporters of feminist movement itself advocating for that kind of efficient lifestyle. So that is why the more spread of the information are likely to guaranteed on our side of the house. Okay, secondly, about fragmentation of the movement. So OG talking about the there's a progressive sect of the feminist movement that female have to seek the career, and moderate or conservative sect of feminist movement, and these women are focusing on the family or so on. We say that is clearly incompatible, because both two types of sect cannot intercommunicate with each other and cannot provide the meaningful information towards each other, right? And secondly, these kind of sects are likely to be conflict because these values are completely different, and so like slow life and efficient life, that is clearly different, and these kind of values are not intertwined within each other. But in our side of the house, the habit of feminism uniquely take the role between the intertwining these two ideology, that is uniquely available. So since habit of feminism say that both life and works are important, that is why these kind of work-oriented feminism or family-oriented feminism can be seen as a subsection of that habit of feminism, right? That is why these kind of two types of different feminism are likely to be cooperate with each other in terms of like efficient lifestyle and how to re-employ to the companies or so on. And that is why these communications are likely to available on our side of the house. That is why we say that more tied up within each other are likely. And lastly, about the societal change. I think the individual parts of the argument is enough to beat the opening government, but at least on the societal level, we say that women have the power to advocating inside of the company and to say that household is also important. That is clearly changed the liberal cooperation. We clearly win this round.
Thank the speaker for the speech, and now I will welcome the member of government.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Just wait a second so I can sort out my notes. Okay, so I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. There's two extensions coming up from closing government. First, I'd like to deal with the deadlock in opening government, whether this narrative is actually likely to leading to the alienization or empowerment. I'd like to prove why it actually alienates more women significantly on our side of the house, filling in the characterization missing link that has been prevalent in opening government. But secondly, I'd like to explain why this literally decreases buy-in to the movement, especially of very important vulnerable women that actually provide a unique safe space for women within the movement. Before that, just a few pieces of rebuttal to side opening opposition. First of all, I think that just as I pointed out in the POI, like their first argument that they try to talk about in the LO speech about like how this narrative can uniquely change like corporate structures or like change government structures and like governmental policies towards women rights or those kind of things. I think that they actually never actually filled in the missing link as to why conservative governments or conservative companies are now specifically going to accept now this kind of feminist narrative to begin with. I think that's still unlikely to happen because patriarchy is still very like strong within these countries, and I think that there's lots of hate against and like despise against women in general. I don't understand like why now suddenly saying that women can be both and compatible is now suddenly going to lead to all of these kind of change in the first place. So they never actually prove all their benefits. But secondly, they try to talk about now this leads to like more if like it gives like women about knowledge of how to like live more efficient to begin with. I think even if it's like even absent of this narrative, probably like if efficiency techniques will probably exist anyways on our side of the house, even if it doesn't directly target women, because I think generally people living in this current situation are facing things like lack of time, want to actually like save more time so they can spend more time with their family, on their career, things that they actually love at the end of the day. And I think that because a lot of corporations or like media, SNS influencers want to tap into these kind of resources, there's still lots of incentives for people to create content to incentivize how to do like and have a healthy lifestyle, like create meals in very easy times anyways on our side of the house. I don't think this metric is I don't think this impact is very, very unique at the end of the day. Given that, moving on to the two extensions coming up from closing government. First of all, I would like to deal with the deadlock in opening up government. So I think that at best, what OG proves is that why this narrative in a vacuum is something really, really bad. But I think that like even closing opposition can come up and easily say that women are not likely going to buy into these sort of like, especially minority women can like actually actively opt out of these kinds of narratives and like choose a narrative more suitable to them. For example, like the choice narrative that OG wants to talk about. Therefore, the burden that OG needed to prove is why both these narrative coexisting is something uniquely toxic to begin with. I'd like to fill in that gap. I'd like to fill in that missing link. I think there are mainly two reasons as to why these two narratives coexisting is something uniquely bad. First of all, I think that generally because resources that the feminist movement has is something zero-sum to begin with, right? Because I think that generally, especially in conservative societies, the amount of airtime these feminist movement can gain, or the amount of resources or the amount of like influence that they can have over society is something very specific and very something limited to begin with, right? What this means is that when we're actually splitting time into like advocating for certain like have it all feminism, but also like you can just have a choice, that actively takes away the amount of representation that this choice feminism actually prevails within society to begin with, right? So at that moment, I think the amount of influence that people can feel, the amount of like role models they can have access to, the amount of media resources they can have access to significantly decrease. Therefore, the chance that women can have access to that more like positive form of feminism is actually significantly going to decrease in the first place, right? So, but secondly, I think that because this narrative actually is saying that women are capable of doing both things, it actually credibles women, it actually decreases the credibility or actually decreases like the value that women feel, that the value of women that can only choose one feel at the end of the day. What this means is that I think a likely analogy is, for example, like the narrative of Bunburyo, though. Like if there's a narrative that says that you can both like achieve academic achievements, but also be like a very good sportsman, for example, I think at the moment that there's an other coexisting narrative, for example, that tell that, oh, like it's still okay if you try to like become a more academic person, and that's good. Or like it's okay that you try to like just advocating for sports is good, exists. I think it actively crowds out those narratives because it's literally saying that individuals are capable of doing both that actually exist, and these people are actually something very, very valuable at the end of the day, right? So therefore, individuals that actually can only achieve either significantly feel less worthy, significantly feel less represented, and actually don't gain that much credibility from people at the end of the day. Therefore, for these two reasons, I think both of the narrative coexisting itself is something extremely bad, and why this narrative existing in a vacuum itself is not enough for OG to actually link to have access to the mechanisms. But secondly, I think OG also didn't prove another burden that's really, really important for them to access their mechanisms. What is that? That is to say that why most women can't actually fundamentally, structurally achieve both a family and both a successful career at the end of the day, right? I think that at best say, oh, it's very tough to achieve both of the things, but they never actually mechanize this, right? I like to actually mechanize this and provide why the vast majority of women are actually unable to achieve both at the end of the day. First of all, I think there's fundamental structural barriers that prevent women from accessing both. Things like, for example, education, or like things that women can receive, for example, at a younger age is significantly harm for them, and especially women coming from conservative communities. I think like even if they do get education and they do like get hired at a job, I think there's also structural barriers existing within these companies that prevent these women to actually get like more higher wages or get things like promotions at the end of the day, right? And these structural barriers are unlikely to change unless we actually break out the patriarchy and actually change the like these conservative mindsets at the end of the day, right? But not only that, even if women like who are successful in their careers are unlikely to now achieve a family, right? Because I think lots of men in conservative communities, for example, hate women that actually are very successful, even more successful for them, or like are as achievable as them, right? Because they actively hate against women, right? And they actually look down against women, right? What this means is that women that can achieve either are most likely to achieve the other, are less likely to achieve the other at the end of the day. But secondly, I think that resources are also an extremely important factor to women, right? What this means is that I think that when you invest, and because women actually need to invest a more amount of resources compared to the men counterparts, what this means is that when women actively engage in things like academics, they lose time to engage with their families. They lose time to spend with their own like boyfriend, for example. But also women that spend significant time with their family also don't have the time to achieve a career, right? So therefore, because resources are zero-sum, it's likely that most women are unable to achieve either at the end of the day, right? So therefore, I think that we prove that even if on-side opposition's best case, when even if it empowers some women, I think actually the more likely scenario is that most women are getting alienated from this narrative because they don't have access to that. Moving on to the second extension of why this significantly decreases buy into the movement, because it significantly alienates the vast majority of women who actually are much more vulnerable and actually need that kind of mental support to join these kind of movements. Because they don't feel represented, they're less likely to join these movements. Therefore, the women that actually want these kind of mental validation are less likely to have access to that because simply other women like them do not join the movement to begin with, right? And I think this is extremely important impact compared to like the social change impact that came from opening government, simply because this is more certain, right? I think it's conservative communities, social change is unlikely to happen anyways, but I think that having these kind of mental catharsis is something really, really important and really, really certain at the end of the day. And for all these reasons, I think this is more important. We're very proud to propose.
Thank the speaker for the speech, and now welcome the member of opposition.
If you have any POIs, please type in chat. My gender pronounces he, him. Okay, I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to talk about 3 things in my speech. Firstly, and why this have it all movement, what this have it all movement looks like, and how this movement enables enable and help people and help a woman who are struggling to pursue both. And secondly, and why on their side of the house, what government side cannot co-opt the impact, and why exclusively they decrease chances of women to succeed in jobs and any workplaces. And the third, I'm going to talk about and who is going to be the target of the debate, and I'm going to address the issues about buy-in movement and why on our side of the house we do not have. I don't think we decrease the number of people who join the movement. But before there are extremist rebuttals to the closing government. Closing government talk about the split resource allocation. I don't think this is unique to our side of the house. They still have a problem of split resource allocation when they try both supporting supporting women in the household and supporting women in the workplaces, you have to choose you have to choose either, and if you choose both at the same time, you necessarily have to split resources. However, on our side of the house, if you have a plausible and realistic way, and like maternity leave both benefits people in the household and people in the workplaces, I think this is more plausible and this is more likely to be passed in the parliament. And with that being said, I'm going to go address the first argument about how this Haviro movement look like and how this is going to be effective even in conservative areas. What we say is that what we can do as an Haviro feminist movement is that we can inject a lot of people in the governmental board where they can have a voice and have a say about their policy making, and they can trust the support structure is going to be like this is likely to be the ones that enabled that realized in Japan about the law of equal opportunity for both gender and woman and man, and that has been achieved by women who is in workplaces. At the same time, they have to work. They have to raise their own child, right? They raise the awareness about maternity leave. They raise the awareness of same wages just because they have the experience of having a child and raising the child and have to feed their own family. These causes and these problems that they identified by those people, like maternity leave and same opportunity and same wages, can be raised only by those people who have the struggle to raise their families and raise their own child, because they have the lived and direct experience of both of that, and they can inject a realistic view to the government, right? Unless that experience, I don't think that they have a realistic view and plausible view onto the government, onto the policy making. This is unlikely to be passed in the parliament. Moreover, they can raise concern about working environment, like the example of is the sexual harassment. Like because of that war, many people feel free to criticize people who abuse those women, right? So I want to answer the POI from Closing Government. Closing Government talk about the conservative area. This change is unlikely to be enabled. I want to point out two things. Firstly, this is just a mitigation. They didn't prove why on the counterfactual they can enable a change in conservative area. But secondly, we would argue that even in conservative area, we can have a change because the change on the governmental level normalize the change, right? As in the laws of equal opportunity for both gender, I think that this normalize the change, and people take it for granted that women and men have the same opportunity for job application, right? Even conservative companies do get affected by this law change, by this policy change, because they think they are deemed to be a very strange and abnormal companies, and they lower their reputation. What that means is two things. Firstly, they have a lower candidates and fewer candidates, and secondly, they fewer reputation, thus meaning that they have fewer customers, right? It affects a lot of corporation, even they have a conservative views, because even the conservative companies have the shared interest of profit seeking. That being said, I think conservative companies still have our opportunity to change on our side of the house. The second thing I'm going to talk about is that on government side of the house, your government cannot co-opt this benefit that I mentioned, like maternity leave or same wages and same opportunity for genders, right? The reason for this is twofold. And the thesis of this argument is that on counterfactual, the most women choose to marry and prioritize marriage over their own career. The reason for this is twofold. The firstly, marriage continue to be idealized, as opposed to this, the success in career are likely to be de-romanticized. The reason for this is that marriage is going to be supported both gender, right? Man also demands it. Man also demands a dating app because they want to date someone, right? The example of this is romantic TV shows and drama still exist on either side of the house. Thus, the woman still likely to be affected by this, narrative that marriage should be the, primer goal in their life, right? However, and this is especially true when you look at the fact that in Japan and India, the conservative values marriage over any career. But one very, very bad for the feminist movement, because women who try to balance those two metric is likely to be seen as strange on their side of the house. Even some women raise concern about working environment. Even some women raise concern about maternity leave. Even some women project a realistic view onto the government about maternity leave, these people are likely to be seen as very, very abnormal, and there's less support for these efforts, less allocation of resources, and human resources money allocations. For that reasons, on their side of the house, they have fewer support structures on both people in the household and people in workplaces. But second and third and lastly, I want to address who is going to be the target of the debate. Two things I wanted to address in my speech in this analysis. The first thing I want to point out is that this movement not incentivize every woman in the first place, right? Those who actively choose and willingly choose one choice, like academic and success in career, unlikely to feel excluded. The reason being is twofold. The firstly, and even on our side of the house, this movement share the same values and more or less the same interests as the ones that on the counterfactual. That means they still have the opportunity to join the movement because efficient housework and reduction of discrimination still be promoted on our side of the house. But the second reason then is that even if these people do not share the same interests, I think romanticization of both choices is unlikely to affect these people because these people firmly believe that their choice isn't right. So I don't think these people are affected and significantly damaged mentally. For those reasons, we take all to discuss. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for the speech. Now I will welcome the government whip.
I'm audible.
Yes, audible.
Thank you. So PI on chat, please take PI around 5 or 6 minutes. So yeah, start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So firstly dealing with the CEO, then going to the O, then finally going to the OG, then finally going to the O. So firstly going to CEO. I think the CEO's case is mainly firstly they talked about resources in their latter half of their speeches by saying like in our side of how we were decreasing our resources in the past, right? Their own their mechanism is just so simple. I think in our side of the message is not so coherent and likely to be considered as not so like our message is not so like the coherent and different in the two types, right? So that I think the dissociative decrease. The first thing to note here is society or the people who have incentive or who actually invested into these kinds of the movement in the current situation is not so logical in the first place as a debater in the first place. The people who want to support the female or people who want to support the one types of the choices is actually likely to investing into the feminism movement in order to support the female choices in the first place. Even though this is illogical in the messages in terms of the different feminine movement, I think this thing doesn't matter in the first place. But secondly, I think the most importantly, my partner correctly illustrated, in terms of resources or in terms of cost efficiency, our side will still be much more better in the first place. The pushback coming from their side, closing opposition side is that in our side of the house, anyway, that we have to divide the resources into the, like, for example, pro-career and pro child care leaving or etc. The important implication from our extension is that in our side of the house, even though we have to divide our resources anyway into these kind of specific two ideology, at least in our side have these kind of things is better because in our side we can have only two or these kind of choices in the first place. On the comparative in their side of the house, in these kinds of the other choices, for example, like focusing on the career or focusing on the family, is actually crowded out by these messages in the first place. I think this is a much more toxic in the first place. The reason for here is just so simple. I think in their side of the house, the most likely is the people who are privileged white person, white privileged female or female actress or these kinds of people likely to support this feminism movement, this habit of feminism movement in the first place, because this is a much more idealistic way, and likely the feminism movement also like illustrated their own action or their own ideology as the most ideological, most idealistic in the first place. So that's as a likely conclusion. I think in their side of the house, when the habit of feminism is likely to go into the very well influential, I think in their side of the house, these other kinds of the choices, for example, focusing on the career, these kind of situations likely to crowd it out, but rather considered as the people who are incompetent, who have no capability to focus to like making the balance with these two issues in the first place. I think this situation is much more helpful. In that sense, my partner's extension is very shining because my partner's last case is about like the poor people or people who live in conservative people, or those kinds of people who have no capability to pursue these kind of the choice, have it all choices, is actually likely to suffer from this situation. The pushback coming from CEO is that these kinds of people are anyway be will stay at conservative and never be supported out, or their situation never be changed. The comparative, I think the important comparative or important delta here is that in their side of the house, these kinds of, in our side of the house, at least these kinds of poor people or people who doesn't have capability to making the balance with these two issues is actually get gathered in the one community as a like feminism and who is for the pro career or who is for the pro like child care leaving and share their own experience. It looks like, for example, the people only focusing on the child care leaving is also some problem in their own like the own life. It looks like the baby is very noisy in the night or noisy at night, or like the making the every food at the 3 times a day is very time depriving or etc. These kind of the experience likely to share, and these kind of the experience, these kind of the like really hard reality is actually these like sharing these experience in and of itself totally release your stresses, totally feeling you that, oh, I have a friend, I have the same people in the society or etc. These kind of feeling some catharsis is actually giving you some mental relief in the first place. I think this situation, this thing is actually only accessible in our side house, because in their side of house, the likely scenario my partner is clearly giving you is that the people who only have a capability, or people who only like choose the both two things to like the career and the child care leaving is actually only accessible to the our representation or catalysis, and the other kinds of people who have no choice to like to have it all in the first place is actually likely to feeling some excluded from this feminism movement, are likely to feeling no representation in the first place. Note that I think these nuances will never be coming from opening government. Opening government told us, oh, if you're looking at the SNS or media and people who only succeed, I think these kinds of people going to depress or etc. My partner clearly giving you the mechanism about why these kinds of people feeling unrepresented in the first place, but also in many cases, most of the people cannot pursue both two choices in the first place. So that I think, firstly, I think in terms of closing clashes, I think at least we clearly proved that. The first, I think in general, these kind of things clearly like impossible to pursue both two career. But secondly, I think at least in the conservative, most vulnerable people is actually feel some unrepresented and most significantly suffer from this situation, from this motion. And also, I think in terms of the safe place of role of the safe place as a feminism movement, I think this situation is about serious in the first place. But then going to the OG comparison, I think I already told you about like the comparison in the first place. I think the opening of the failure of the opening government come to two faults. The firstly, I think opening government only assert that these kind of burden of the child care leaving and pursuing the career is very troublesome, but they never mechanize why this is not so compatible in the first place. Our team is the first team that will mechanize this, and also their whole case is a prerequisite for proving that. I think we will already win this debate. But second way, their mechanism about a more buy-in or etc. is totally be unclear in terms of the impact, and very uncertain in terms of like proving their own like ultimate impact in the first place. Our side totally proved that at least the conservative people is clearly suffer. This is so certainly impact, and we think we already override the opening government in terms of mechanism level and also the impact level in the first place. The finally to the opening opposition side, I think the main problem with the opening opposition side is that their side how they trying to their side has in terms of like both the like people is gonna be much more efficient in terms of like childcare leaving and also like in the working or etc. The first thing to note here is like I think this kind of situation never be changed at all. Anyway, the people have some demand again towards like making their life efficient. For example, the people who are trying to focusing on their childcare leaving, these kind of people want to making their life efficient. People who want to pursue the career, I think these kind of people anyway have some demand in the first place. But more importantly, I think the conservative population never be changed at all. This is totally my partner clearly giving you some enough engagement to the opening opposition side. We will already beat the opening opposition side. Thus we will win this debate. Thank you.
Thank the speaker for the speech, and now I will welcome the member and the opposition whip.
Right. Okay. I'm going to directly jump onto the house by house comparison. Firstly, talking about opening government, nextly, Shiji, and lastly, opening opposition. So firstly, opening government. The failure of opening government is twofold. Firstly, they talk about fragmentation when they only talk about on their side of the house, they have various movement advocating for their change. But the problem is when they identify a lot of, various feminist movement going on and like free choice feminist movement, and other than that, I think when they have a fragmented and they have a separate view, the fragmentation happens either side of the house. So second problem is that on the counterfactual, they talk about they can hire housekeepers and they can use Uber instead to have an efficient house working. However, this is not about having family at all. I think this motion only leads to having families. That doesn't mean on hire Uber, using Uber and hire housekeepers is unique to this side of the house. I mean, when you have a family, you probably have these issues and you identify that issues, you probably demand for the change. And on either side of the house, I mean, on our side of the house, they still have possibility to enable that change. Okay. Secondly, talking about closing government. Closing government stresses that extensions about people who physically and virtually cannot pursue both careers is likely to coerce or likely to be excluded from this movement. The problem is twofold. The firstly, they talk about unrepresentation issues, but the problem is when the closing government also said in the same place the other narrative is coexist with this narrative. I mean, what that means is that those people who only choose one single way is likely to have the access to other narrative, like people, feminist movement supporting housewives or so on, right? But the second problem is they talk about this structural change. However, they didn't give any mechanization why this structural change is likely to be uniquely enabled on their side of the house, right? There's no counterfactual available. Okay, that being said, what is the extension from causing opposition? Causing opposition talk about two things. Firstly, what is the delta in the debate on what they should be the delta? I mean, on our side of the house, where we can enable a change, on their side of the house, where they cannot have the access to the change because the marriage comes first before marriage comes before in any success in job application of career success, right? On the counterfactual. But the second thing we addressed here is that weighing on. I'll be weighing here later in my speech about why women who choose both career and house success is likely to be the most important target in the debate. So firstly, I want to rehash what opposing opposition have extended and contributed to this debate. What we give is that firstly, what is the issues are likely to be raised uniquely on our side of the house. This is likely to be an maternity. This is likely to be the same wages and same opportunity that happens historically in Japan, that laws for equal opportunity for for same both gender, I mean woman and man, and these changes, and historically speaking, that enabled by people, women who work in the companies at the same time who have the child to raise, to take care of, right? So I think these concerns is likely to be raised uniquely from these people, and even if the government say and claim that these changes is still likely to happen on the government side, I don't think this is unique, and I don't think this is very realistic, because only those people who have the lived experience, direct experience of raising their child, and at the same time having to work have work to care about, is likely to inject a realistic view onto the governmental board. This is likely to be more likely to be passed on the parliament. This is likely more likely to be listened to by the politicians, right? The second thing I want to address, I already addressed here, is the marriage is likely to come before any career success. The reason being is the narrative for marriage and romanticization marriage is raised both by women and man, right? Still on proposition side, there's a lot of narrative romanticizing marriage because man also advocate and demands marriage, right? They also demands the romantic TV shows and dramas or any dating apps because they are available. There's a lot of demand for man. That's why I think even on their side of the house, there are a lot of women are likely to be kind of coerced or feel that they should get married in the first place, right? As a result, these women are likely to deprioritize the choice of careers and success. This means that there's a lot of fewer demands for any changes in workplaces, even if some people identify that. Because when you identify that issues, even if you raise the concerns, you're likely to be seen as strange. You're likely to be seen as someone doing very impossible things. So they get less support and fewer support on that efforts. Okay, that being said, I want to expand the gap between the opening opposition. Opening opposition didn't answer the POI from closing government, saying that the conservative area is likely to be the one who is going to be left out. We already pointed out a governmental change normalized that change, and many people view this as a normal thing. So many people backlash conservative companies, backlash conservative areas when it is necessary. But moreover, we already pointed out to the closing government that people who choose actively choose one single ideal on a single way, like whichever like housewives or like successful women and workers in workplaces. I think this is symmetrical on either side of the house by pointing out two things. Firstly, this movement shares the same interest as the ones that proposition advocating right now, because on our side of the house, we still have the opportunity to enable as efficient housewives, as the opening opposition talked about, and we also have the opportunity to reduce discriminations from workplaces, and this can be happen either side of the house. What that means is that firstly, prioritizations, even these narrative coexist. I think this movement is likely to be prioritized, but secondly, and the woman who actively choose a single way is likely to join the movement on our side of the house. But lastly, I want to engage. I want to stress a woman who actively choose both career and house, family is likely to be the one likely to be valued in the debate, because these people are doing very, very hard thing. These people are doing and very hard thing that no one can expect, and any traditional values can expect. For that reasons, I think as a feminist movement, we should do our best efforts to support these people and enable us and realize the supporting structures for women who are struggling the most. For that reasons, we are so proud to oppose.
Thank the speaker for the speech, and now this concludes the debate. I think judges will move. Okay, let me recheck the move to the deliberation room. Okay, so yeah, I think we have the Zoom. In the Zoom, we have deliberation room. So for the panels, let's move on to the room 3 deliberation room. And for the debaters, please stay here. We're gonna be back in 30 minutes. So yeah, thank you for the round.